The rejection happened quietly, without shouting or drama, and that made it hurt even more. On Christmas Eve, in a city glowing with lights and false cheer, a man dressed in a worn coat stood alone outside a cafe, watching snow settle on his shoes as the door closed behind him. He had just been dismissed from a blind date for not being what she expected, and no one around him knew that beneath that cheap jacket was a billionaire who had chosen, for one night, to live as the world truly treated the poor. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion, please like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps spread stories that remind us humanity still matters. His name was Daniel Harper, a self-made billionaire CFO turned investor, raised in a Christian home in the United States where faith was lived quietly, not loudly. Daniel had wealth beyond imagination, private planes, estates, and influence, yet loneliness had followed him into every success. After a painful divorce and years of shallow relationships, he had grown distrustful of affection offered too easily. So one Christmas, burdened by the feeling that people loved his status more than his soul, he decided to test the world. He signed up for a blind date using only his first name, a modest job description, and an old photograph. He left his driver at home, took public transport, and wore clothes that made him blend in rather than stand out. The cafe had been warm and decorated, filled with couples laughing and families sharing desserts. Daniel arrived early, ordered a simple coffee, and waited. When his date arrived, her disappointment was immediate and barely concealed. She scanned him, his clothes, his posture, the way his hands showed signs of real work rather than manicured leisure. Within minutes, the atmosphere shifted. Her smile faded, her phone became more interesting, and soon she stood, offered a polite excuse, and walked away, leaving Daniel alone with his cooling coffee and the quiet confirmation of his fears. He didn't chase her. He didn't explain. He simply sat there for a moment, absorbing the truth he already knew. Wealth had protected him from rejection, but it had also blinded him to how harsh the world could be when money was absent. When he finally stood to leave, the barista avoided his eyes, already moving on to the next customer who looked more promising. Outside, the cold air hit hard. Christmas music drifted from nearby stores, cheerful and cruel in contrast to his mood. Daniel walked without direction, his thoughts heavy. He wondered when his life had become so empty despite being so full of things. He wondered what his parents, now gone, would think of the man he had become, hiding his identity not out of humility, but out of fear of being unseen for who he really was. As he passed a small park dusted with snow, he noticed a figure sitting on a bench near a flickering streetlight. It was a young woman and a little girl, no older than 7, bundled in mismatched coats. They weren't begging. They were sharing a small sandwich, breaking it carefully in half. The girl laughed at something small, her breath visible in the cold, her joy bright and unguarded. Daniel slowed, something in that laughter cutting through his despair. He sat on the far end of the bench, not wanting to intrude. The woman glanced at him briefly, wary but polite, then returned her attention to the child. Daniel noticed the girl's shoes were too thin for the weather, her gloves frayed, yet there was warmth between them that money couldn't buy. The girl looked at Daniel with open curiosity, not judgment, not calculation, just a simple human gaze. Daniel felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. The girl didn't see a poor man or a rich one. She saw a person. In her eyes, there was no rejection, no expectation, only presence. She smiled at him, wide and sincere, and in that moment, the weight of the evening lifted just enough for him to breathe again. The woman explained, without shame, that they were waiting for a shelter to open later that night. Christmas had been hard. Work was inconsistent. Life had not been kind. Yet she spoke with dignity, her faith intact despite everything. Daniel listened, truly listened. For the first time in a long while, he realized how rare it was for someone to speak to him without knowing his name carried power. Snow continued to fall as the city rushed past him, indifferent. Daniel thought about the restaurant reservations he had canceled, the expensive wine waiting unopened at home, the gifts he hadn't bothered to buy because there was no one to give them to. He thought about how this Christmas Eve, stripped of his wealth, had revealed more truth than any board meeting ever had. The little girl shifted closer to him on the bench, unafraid. sharing the warmth of her presence as naturally as she had shared her food. That small act, so ordinary and yet so profound, broke something open inside Daniel. He understood then that the test he thought he was giving the world had turned into a test of his own heart. The night unfolded quietly, without spectacle. Lights flickered on across the city as snow softened the edges of buildings and people alike. Daniel stayed with them until the shelter doors opened, until he knew they would be warm and safe. He walked away afterward, not toward his luxury apartment, but through the city streets, thinking deeply about the kind of man he wanted to be in the year ahead. Christmas morning arrived with stillness. Daniel woke early, sunlight reflecting off untouched snow. For the first time in years, he felt clarity instead of emptiness. He understood that love couldn't be filtered by appearances, that dignity existed far beyond bank accounts, and that sometimes the purest kindness comes from those who have the least to give. In the weeks that followed, Daniel made changes that no one could see on the surface. He didn't announce donations or seek praise. He invested differently, funded shelters, supported single mothers trying to rebuild their lives. He reconnected with his faith, attending church quietly, sitting in the back, listening instead of leading. And every Christmas after that, he returned to the city streets, not to test people, but to serve them. Before this story ends, please take a moment to comment and share what it made you feel. Your engagement helps these messages of compassion reach others who may need hope. Daniel never forgot that Christmas Eve, the rejection that humbled him, or the little girl whose simple kindness reminded him of what truly matters. In a world obsessed with status and appearance, she had offered him something priceless, a reminder that being seen as human is the greatest gift of all.